The message arrived without warning. No preamble, no diplomacy, no room for refusal. It came from the Galactic Council, a cold assembly of civilizations that had long since outgrown empathy in favor of efficiency. Earth had been judged, not for war, not for rebellion, but for defiance. Humanity had refused to conform to certain optimization protocols, declining to cull its weak, refusing to abandon its sick, and stubbornly preserving what the Council called inefficient emotional bonds. So the punishment was decided. 6 million refugees. They were not criminals. They were not invaders. They were simply unwanted. Entire populations displaced from dozens of star systems, deemed burdens by their own advanced societies. Too poor, too sick, too different, too human-like in their need for care and compassion. The Council didn't destroy them. That would have been wasteful. Instead, they chose Earth, a developing world, still chaotic, still clinging to morality, as a dumping ground. They value compassion, the Council's verdict read. Let them be tested by it. And then the sky broke. Ships, thousands of them, tore through Earth's atmosphere in a synchronized descent. Not warships, not sleek vessels of conquest. These were overcrowded carriers, patched together, barely functional. They filled the skies over every continent, casting shadows that turned day into a dim twilight. Panic spread instantly. Governments scrambled. Militaries prepared for the worst. But the worst never came. The ships landed quietly, and when their doors opened, the truth stepped out. They were not an army. They were frightened. Beings of all shapes and forms, some humanoid, some barely recognizable, emerged slowly, hesitantly. Children clung to their parents. Elders collapsed from exhaustion. Entire species carried visible scars of neglect, starvation, and abandonment. Some wept. Some simply stared at the ground, too broken to hope. The world held its breath. For a moment, humanity stood at a crossroads. Fear whispered loudly. 6 million strangers, completely alien, suddenly on Earth. Different biology, unknown diseases, unpredictable behavior. Economies would strain. Resources would thin. There were voices, loud, angry voices that demanded rejection, containment, even retaliation. They did this to us, some said. This is an attack. But then, something quieter began to rise. A doctor in Mumbai stepped forward first. She didn't ask permission. She didn't wait for policy. She simply approached one of the refugees, a frail, insectoid child trembling in the dust, and offered water. That moment changed everything. Across the globe, people followed. Not because they were ordered to, because they chose to. Cities opened emergency shelters. Schools transformed into housing centers. Volunteers flooded airports, landing zones, and refugee camps. Scientists worked tirelessly to understand alien biology, not to weaponize it, but to heal it. Farmers donated food. Engineers built adaptive environments for species that required different atmospheres or gravity conditions. There were struggles. Of course there were. Some refugees couldn't breathe Earth's air. Others required temperatures that clashed with human survival. Cultural misunderstandings sparked tension. Fear didn't disappear overnight. It lingered, sometimes erupting into conflict. There were protests. There were political battles. There were moments where it seemed like humanity might fracture under the weight of it all. But something remarkable happened. Every time fear surged, compassion answered. A community in Brazil built floating habitats for aquatic refugees. In northern Canada, entire towns relocated to accommodate beings that thrived in extreme cold. In Kenya, solar-powered atmospheric domes were constructed for species that required toxic gases to survive. Everywhere, people adapted, not because it was easy, but because it was right. And slowly, the refugees changed too. They had expected rejection. They had lived entire lives under systems that valued productivity over existence. To them, kindness was either transactional or non-existent. But Earth was different. A being from the Aureolus cluster, once abandoned due to neurological instability, found itself enrolled in a human art program. Its chaotic mind, once deemed useless, produced visuals that stunned even Earth's most celebrated artists. A species that communicated through harmonic frequencies began collaborating with human musicians, creating sounds never before heard, music that resonated not just in ears, but in bones. A group of engineers from a discarded industrial species helped revolutionize sustainable energy on Earth, not because they were told to, but because for the first time, someone had treated them as worth something. The 6 million refugees stopped being the burden. They became part of humanity, and far beyond Earth, the Galactic Council watched. At first, they expected collapse. They calculated probabilities, resource depletion, societal breakdown, civil unrest. Every model predicted failure within months, but months passed, then years, and Earth thrived, not without scars, not without difficulty, but undeniably stronger. The Council began to notice something else, something they had not accounted for: influence. Other worlds began questioning their own systems. Why had they abandoned their weakest? Why had they defined value so narrowly? Quiet revolutions sparked across distant star systems. Whispers of the human way spread, an idea once dismissed as primitive, now seen as powerful. Because compassion, they realized, was not weakness. It was resilience. Eventually, the Council sent another message to Earth. This time, it was not a punishment. It was a question. Why did you not break? Earth's response was simple: because we refused to become what you are. And for the first time in its long, calculated existence, the Galactic Council had no answer. The silence that followed Earth's reply did not feel empty. It felt watched. For weeks, no new transmissions came from the Galactic Council. No threats, no sanctions, no acknowledgement at all. But humanity had already learned something about the Council. They never acted without purpose. Their silence wasn't peace. It was observation. Deep in orbit, hidden beyond standard detection, Council probes studied Earth continuously. They tracked energy consumption, population growth, atmospheric strain. They monitored interactions between humans and the 6 million refugees. Every conflict, every cooperation, every failure, every success. And what they saw began to fracture something ancient in their logic, because Earth wasn't stabilizing. It was transforming. Entire cities had evolved into multi-species ecosystems. Architecture defied previous limits. Buildings that shifted atmospheric composition floor by floor, streets that adjusted gravity gradients for different beings, transportation, systems redesigned for bodies that moved in ways humans had never imagined. Languages merged, cultures intertwined, food, art, philosophy, everything expanded beyond human origin. But more importantly, so did identity. The term refugee quietly disappeared. They were no longer outsiders. They were Earthborn. The first major shift came unexpectedly. A distant system, Cruelty Prime, sent a distress signal, not to the Council, to Earth. Their star was destabilizing and evacuation protocols had failed. Billions would die. Under normal circumstances, the Council would have declared the system a loss. Efficiency demanded it. But someone on Cruelty Prime had heard of Earth, heard of the world that took in the unwanted. The Council intercepted the message immediately. By law, such communication was forbidden. Earth was not authorized to intervene in external system crises. The Council prepared a warning, but they hesitated, because they wanted to see what humanity would do. The debate on Earth was fierce. This is exactly what they want, some leaders argued. They're testing us again. If we overextend, we collapse. We barely stabilized after the first 6 million, others added. This could be billions. But the counter-argument came not from governments. It came from those who had once been abandoned. A representative from the Refugee Coalition stood before the United Earth Assembly, a being whose species had no vocal cords, speaking through a harmonic translator. When we arrived, it said, you had every reason to reject us. Every calculation would have justified it. But you did not choose calculation. You chose us. The chamber fell silent. We are alive because you believed life has value beyond efficiency. If you turn away now, then what we became here was never real. That ended the debate. The mobilization was unlike anything in human history. Not just humans, everyone. Ships were constructed at impossible speeds, combining alien engineering with human adaptability. Atmospheric stabilizers, evacuation, fleets, medical carriers, technologies born from collaboration, not hierarchy. And for the first time, Earth didn't act alone. Messages spread quietly, system to system. Not from governments, from people, from beings who had once been discarded. If Earth helped us, we will help them. At first it was small, a single transport ship from a minor world. Then another, then dozens, then hundreds. By the time the fleet reached Kareth Prime, it was no longer an Earth operation. It was a movement. The evacuation succeeded, not perfectly, not without loss. But against every projection, billions were saved. And something irreversible happened. The Council lost control of the narrative because now there was proof. Compassion didn't just preserve life. It scaled. The next council session was unlike any before it. For the first time, dissent was not whispered. It was spoken. You called them inefficient, one member stated. Yet they have achieved what none of us could. They risk collapse, another argued weakly. They risked it before, came the reply. And instead of breaking, they changed the rules. The chamber, once unified in cold precision, fractured into argument. Some still clung to the old doctrine, efficiency, order, control, but others had seen enough. Then came the moment no one expected, a transmission, not from the council as a whole, from one of its oldest members, a civilization that had not interfered in external affairs for millennia. We request asylum, the message said. Across the galaxy, shock rippled. A founding species of the council, asking Earth for refuge. Their reason followed. We perfected efficiency, we eliminated suffering, we optimized existence until nothing unpredictable remained. A pause. And in doing so, we erased meaning. Earth did not respond immediately, because this time, the question was heavier. These were not the abandoned. These were the architects of abandonment, the ones who had cast millions aside, who had sent the 6 million. Voices rose again. They don't deserve it. They created this system. If we accept them, what message does that send? But again, the answer did not come from power. It came from experience. A human teacher speaking alongside a former refugee child, now grown, addressed the assembly. Compassion isn't a reward, she said. It's a choice. The former refugee stepped forward. They didn't show us kindness, he added, but someone has to show them how it works. The decision was made. Earth opened its doors, not blindly, not without conditions. Accountability would exist, change would be required, but they would not be turned away. And that was the moment the galaxy truly shifted, because now, even the most powerful civilizations understood something undeniable. Humanity had not just survived the Council's punishment. It had redefined power itself, not as control, not as dominance, but as the ability to care, when it would be easier not to. Far beyond the stars, the remnants of the old system began to fade, and in its place, something new began to rise. Not an empire, not a council, but a network, messy, imperfect, unpredictable, alive. And at its center, a small, stubborn planet that refused to stop choosing compassion. even when the entire universe expected it to fail.